Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome the members of council, staff, and members of the public to our April the 8th council meeting and call this meeting to order. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk, Operations Clerk, for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Hyatt.
Present.
Councillor O'Hara.
Present.
Councillor Patel.
Present.
Councillor Welsh.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Field.
Present.
Mayor Loosely.
Present.
We have a quorum, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson again for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral lands of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. The town of Petrolia is located on the lands associated with the Huron Tract Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and the Indigenous peoples who have called this land home.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to ask council and request that the councillors declare a conflict of interest now or at the appropriate time and complete the necessary paperwork. Seeing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda before you tonight. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please.
Your Worship, I believe we did have an amendment.
Oh, okay.
I believe you filed an amendment with me.
Oh, I was going to announce that later on. You want me to do it now?
Okay.
Okay. I was going to announce it later on, but I can announce it now. That agenda item number, I believe it's 17B, regarding the recommendation to go to MPP Bailey. I'm going to withdraw that from the agenda tonight. So 17B will be the motion to amend the adoption of the agenda would be in order. So I'll move by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Field, and I'll have the clerk read that motion as amended. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as amended the agenda of the April 8th, 2024 regular session of Council.
All right, any discussion from council? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll move us on to the consideration of the minutes of the previous meeting held on March the 25th. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that motion on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Patel. Any discussion regarding those minutes? Errors or omissions? I'll ask the clerk to read that motion before the vote, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on March 25th, 2024.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll take us to a moment of reflection. I'll ask everyone to please stand, please. Thank you. Please be seated. That'll bring us to the roundtable announcements.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
And first tonight, we start at the top. We have Councillor Clark will start us off, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I have attended the Lambton County Municipal Association meeting and banquet on March 28th, along with yourself, Mr. Charlebois, and Deputy Mayor Field. Lambton County is celebrating their 175th anniversary this year, and we were treated to a very informative history lesson. And I'd recommend if anybody has an opportunity to visit the Heritage Museum this year, there's going to be some really good information, I think, for you to learn about the beginnings of Lambton County and kind of where everything started and how it got started.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll speak to that as well later on as well. Councillor Hyatt.
I have nothing to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Hara.
Yeah, I sit on the 150 meeting and things are really going well. We're really being well attended at all the functions. The RCMP musical ride, the tickets are selling great, and it's going to be make plans for a lot, go to the events. There's going to be a lot of good things this year.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hare, and I certainly welcome council and everyone here present. If you're able to attend some of these events, to please do so. Councillor Welsh.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Field.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, I have a short one. I know we just met 2 weeks ago, but I also attended the Lambton County Municipal Banquet held in Kamlaki on Thursday, March 28th with Deputy Mayor Field, Councillor Clark, Mr. Rick Charlebois, CAO Treasurer, were also in attendance. Mr. Andrew Meyer, General Manager, Cultural Services, and Lori, his assistant, gave the history of Lambton County that was very interesting and well done. I attended a meeting of County Council held on Wednesday, April 3rd, and as usual, will continue to keep Council informed. I also attended the Sarnia-Lambton Chamber of Commerce lunch with MP Marilyn Gladu on Friday, April the 5th at the Best Western Guildwood in Sarnia. MP Marilyn Gladu provided us with an update on the latest developments in Lambton and opened it up for any questions. And that's all I have. That will move us on to correspondence for information. We have items A to D, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion and to pull anything out if you wish. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Clark. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file correspondence items 10A through D.
Any questions from council? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll bring us on to number 11, correspondence. There is none at this time. And that'll move us on to delegations. There were 2 listed on the agenda. There's one regarding the Blue Water Health CE Foundation, who are unable to attend tonight, but stated they would be making an announcement in the near future or at a later date. So that's good news. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Mike Barron to come forward regarding the Petrolia Community Fund 2024 Micro Grant Awards. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. It's very exciting to be here tonight. It was, well, a year and 12 months, I think, since I was here last, where I just basically started. So now that I have a little more tenure, it's nice and relaxed to be here. I mean, it was relaxing last year, and it is very relaxing. This is my second council meeting today, so I won't get into the other one, but it's great to be here, and it's great to it was great to see you last Friday at Marilyn Gladu's talk as well. So thank you, and I'd like to also recognize that this is an exciting time with the 150th anniversary.
This is exciting.
Oh. Go ahead, continue
Okay.
on.
So it's great. It's great to be here. It's very exciting. This year we had 11 applications, and we were able to. The committee was able to select and grant to 7 of 11. So that's great. The total value of what is being distributed today is 11,000. I have to look down, 11,450. So we were able to fund or partially fund 7 of the submissions, and it's great. Last year when I was here, I think we only had 1 of the groups here. We had a mix-up, so I don't know if that was a rookie setup for myself, but it's great to see lots of faces here tonight. The other thing I can let you know is that in working with Mr. Charlebois and the committee, we're going to, the foundation will come out in September as part of, I think, the 150th anniversary to be able to have more of an awareness campaign around the fund. And again, we can come and speak to council maybe more formally about that as we go forward. So it'll be great to do that. So with that, without any further ado, I'll have the people come up to get their checks,
Sure.
and then
Go
we'll take a
ahead.
picture
Yeah.
at the end.
And I can certainly have Jess give you a hand if you like, or Mrs. Smith.
I think I'll
You okay?
go back and forth, and
Okay.
so we have Noel's gift, and I know Anita Tressler is here for tonight. Do you want them to stay?
Yeah, we're going to get a picture, I think, at the end with everyone, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Just stay here for a sec. Yeah, thank you. We'll get your picture with everyone.
Tammy Rankin for Tammy's Place. If Nicole Begrass with the Petrolia District Skating Club.
Great. Hey, Nicole.
Wade from the YMCA. Wade has a pickleball tournament here in town, and if you don't know, I like to play pickleball, but that's we'll save that for another time. Tracy from Lamp Literacy. And Deb Patel from No One Stands Alone.
Have to give her just a few minutes.
Hope that wasn't pickleball.
That was a meeting.
I said sorry.
You're welcome. And Chad Burke from Kiwanis. Well, yeah.
Oh, Laura.
How are you? Take a photo now.
Just while we're getting ready, first of all, on behalf of council, I want to thank you. I want to thank all those that received some monies to put towards a good cause. Congratulations. And that's great news for the town of Petrolia to have this many. And we love it when you hand out dollars. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think, like I say, when we come back and maybe have like a bit of an awareness campaign, we can even try to grow the funds. So.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
You photobomb? Can you photobomb?
I'm going to hide behind Laurel's head. Oh, he moved his camera.
You didn't get a grant. You didn't get an envelope.
All right.
You didn't get an envelope.
Everyone left.
Everyone left. Anyway, I just want to finish. It's really exciting to see this type of thing happen in the community with all those dollars to good functions and the money going to a good cause. Okay, and Mr. Barron, if you can hear me, thank you for coming to address council.
No, it's not working out.
Trying to cash in.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That'll take us on to number 13, community announcements. We have a motion before you. I'll ask for a mover seconder to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Hyatt. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information the April 8th, 2024 community announcements as presented.
Any questions from council? All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. This brings us now to the first opportunity for the public to address council. I'll first ask Mrs. Pearson, do we have anyone written or registered to speak tonight?
Yes, Your Worship, I do. I have Calvin Shoughton registered.
Okay, is Calvin here? Please come forward, yep. State your full name and address for the record, please.
Calvin couldn't be here.
Oh, okay.
Wayne Brandon, live at 1185 Emily Street in Moortown.
Okay,
So I'm here representing Calvin and Shoughton Excavating. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak to you all. The reason we're here is to talk to you folks about the tender that is currently on your agenda for acceptance. I believe it's called Tank Street. I'm just a little nervous here, so I want to try and remember everything I wanted to speak to you about. The tender was recently closed, I believe, just in the last week or so. I'm not certain of the date. I don't know. I've been in the construction business for 40 plus years, and it just seems like it's a bit of an irregularity. I don't know the wording I'm looking for, but the tender was it was closed. I believe there were 6 bidders, and Shoughton was low bidder. I believe the second bidder was disqualified for improper submission. I'm not sure. So my understanding is that there was just under $500,000 between the low bidder and the third place bidder, having the second one thrown out. So my understanding was that the engineer approached Shoughton about revising their tender, taking something out of it. And again, the details I'm sure are going to be in the report to you. So they were publicly stated that they were low bidder. It was I believe it was put into bids and tenders. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe it was put into bids and tenders, made public, and then it was asked of them to rebid a portion, removing some of the items, which they did, assuming the low bidder was the contractor that was going to be chosen. Now, I understand there's not all tenders, or the town of has the right to whatever tender they want, but I've never seen this happen in 40 plus years. They went to the third bidder, having the second one thrown out, the third bidder, and asked them to remove some of the items on their bid and rebid it. That, to me, that is unbelievable. They didn't ask bidder number 4, 5, and 6 to rebid, just 1 and 3.
I think just before we go on, and I certainly hear what you're saying, this is going to be addressed later on in the agenda. Council will be discussing and debating this, and I think the MIG and the representatives will be speaking regarding that. So I think unless you want to finish up I think what I want to make clear is we're not going to debate that now. Right. It will be debated on the agenda at the appropriate time.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. The only thing I could ask is that you just table it and review it and discuss it and do what I have to do.
All right.
Thank
you for coming to address council. Is there anyone else here wishing to address council at this time? Come forward, Horst, state your full name and state your address.
My name's Horst Richter, for those that don't know, and I live at 4051 Glenview Road. And my appearance before you is in regards to, and I apologize that I didn't have sufficient time to do the paperwork and submit it. I was only made aware of this on the weekend. So I've got a couple of little things that I'd like to
Sure. Okay, no, that's fine. Just
so this will clarify a lot, I believe, I hope it does.
thank you. hear what he has to say. Yeah, I think the concern I have with this, Mr. Richter, this is a letter from your lawyer. And I certainly can't advise counsel to speak. I can get you to highlight it, but we won't speak to it without our lawyer's advice as well.
And my reason for submitting it now to council, to the members of council, is to make them all aware of my position in this
Okay?
matter. So
Sure.
I'm not looking for resolution tonight. I'm just hopeful that members of council who are going to make a decision on it eventually are made aware of it.
Well, it's on the agenda for tonight for discussion, so council will be discussing it. But as far as doing anything with this letter until we get legal advice, we won't go any further, but, all right.
And we'll include the letter as part of the minutes as well.
We'll include your letter, this letter from the lawyer is part of the town's minutes. So it's recorded.
Yeah.
It's a record. Okay,
All right, because I hadn't brought it in before, like this is not something
yeah,
that, this is just.
okay, all right.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Mr. Richter. Okay. So that will be
If there was
referred.
anything anybody wanted to ask me regarding.
Well, I'll open it up to council. So again, without getting any legal bid here, is there any clarification or questions you'd like to ask? Okay, seeing none, thank you. All right, let's move us on to administration, which actually brings up the Eureka Street surplus lands. We do have a motion in front of you. I'll ask for council's direction, or at least move in a seconder to put it on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Welsh, seconded by Councillor Clark. Any discussion? I'll give you a minute if you want to look over the letter. Councillor Welsh.
I would like to, I don't know how this works, change the motion, do a new motion that we defer this for further information.
Just table the motion.
Table.
You'll second that? And there's no,
Your worship, just so I'm clear, there's been two distinct motions there. There's been a motion requested to defer and a motion requested to table. They both have different impacts, so I just want to be clear
Table.
on which motion.
you want to table it or defer it?
I'll table
Table it? Okay. So moved, seconded. There's no discussion on a tabled item. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. So that item will be tabled. That'll bring us to fire emergency management. We have a report from Mr. Rick Cousins, Director of Public Safety, Fire Chief, regarding the first quarter 2024 report. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that on the motion, or put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Director of Public Safety, Fire Chief, dated April 8th, 2014, regarding the first quarter of PNEFD.
That was a good report. Any discussion from council? Thank you for that, Chief. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, that'll bring us back to Mr. Rick Cousins, Director of Public Safety and Fire Chief, regarding the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant approval. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Patel. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Fire Chief, Director of Public Safety, dated 8 April 2024, regarding the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant approval.
And I think for those that are present, I know council's aware of it. This is in regards to the $45,000 we received to go towards a generator. Chief Cousins, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Just that it is replacing a 20.
Okay, good. Any other questions from council? Councillor Welsh.
Just congratulations, a good addition to the community and the fire hall for sure.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll take us on now to the report from Mr. Mike Thompson, Director of Operations, regarding the 2024 capital purchase, Kubota Zero Turn. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that motion on the floor. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Clark. Any discussion regarding that motion? Councillor O'Hara.
That seems like a good price. Now, does that include the trade-in, or is it?
Not trading a zero through your worship. We're not trading one in, Councillor O'Hara.
Oh, you're keeping an extra one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see it came in $4,055.27 under budget. That's great. Any other discussion from council? I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to provide direction to the Director of Operations as reflected in the 2024 budget approval to proceed with the procuring of the 2024 Kubota Zero Turn through South Point Equipment for the purchase price of $17,944.73 plus HST.
Any other comments from council? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll move us on now to Mr. Mike Thompson, Director of Operations, regarding the Tank Street reconstruction. Now you have a motion before you. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Clark. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, then we'll open it up.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the Director of Operations dated April 8th, 2024 regarding tender results for the reconstruction project of Tank Street, and that the capital budget amount approved of $1,245,000 be increased by $88,620.90, which includes the engineering and contract admin of $51,293.11 plus HST, and that Henry Hyatt Construction Limited be awarded the reconstruction contract in the amount of $1,282,327.79 plus HST.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. I think at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Conley, engineer from MIG, to come forward, please, to advise council.
Evening, Mayor and Council. So just wondering, would you like me to go through the kind of tendering process, or do you have specific questions regarding my report that I prepared for Mike?
Mr. Thompson, is that okay? Should you just go through the process?
That's fine. The memo speaks for itself, but if council had any questions in particular to the contractor's statements at the beginning of council, Mrs. Conley could address those if so wish, or she could go over it. It's up to you. It's up to
I think
council.
just in a nutshell, because we have it here, but I think for those present, why don't you just go through it briefly, and then I'll open it up for questions at the end.
All right, so on March 12th, the tender closed for the reconstruction of Tank Street, and 6 bids were received. What we found upon opening the bids, they were very significantly higher than what the budget amount was. So in tendering the project, what we had done, so the excess soil requirements nowadays are much more stringent than they used to be. And what we found from our geotechnical report is that there were some soils of concern. They smelled like oil. They were black in color. So MIG carried a number of provisional items in the tender to cover the instance in where could the soil go to, does it have to go to a landfill if it's contaminated, or can it go to a reuse site? So to ensure that we got competitive prices, we included provisional items such as that one in the tender. Another significant item as well was the removal of Phragmites. If you've been down Tank Street, you'll notice the east side ditch is right full of Phragmites that are over my head, and honestly, it is really keeping the ditch from flowing properly. So in our tender, we carried carried quantity in the tender for the sub-excavation of Phragmites. So we would remove the surface vegetation, but then we would also dig down 1 meter to remove all the roots. So if you've ever had to deal with Phragmites, their roots are quite robust, and they shoot off little rhizomes that kind of, the roots continue on forever and ever. So it is important to get all of the roots out if you really want to eliminate the Phragmites. So with that in mind, we included quantity for sub-excavating to that depth. In addition to that, if you dig a hole that's 1 meter deep, we have to fill that hole back with material. So we also carried a provisional item for bringing in clay or additional material to fill the trench once the Phragmites were removed, so that we could grade the ditch appropriately to get water flowing again. So upon tender closing, the first step in the evaluation was, looking at the prices. So obviously a bit of a sticker shock initially. But upon going through the actual individual prices, what we found was a very, very significant portion of the cost that was over the budget amount was related to, first of all, the Phragmites, and second of all, the provisional items for excess soil that we carried. So at that time, Mike discussed it with Mike, and we thought looking into how else we could deal with the Phragmites rather than sub-excavating. So we had the thought, okay, if we spray them first and they are dead, does that require us to be less kind of stringent on the amount of soil we take out with the roots? So we did pursue that, and I did call around to different companies that do spraying. I also spoke to other municipalities that spray Phragmites on an annual basis. And what I found was that process was going to require permits, assessment of the sensitivity of habitat in the area, et cetera. And it was also not the appropriate time of year to spray Phragmites effectively. So if anybody has experience with Roundup, as you know, you need to have green growth and a lot of sunlight to actually kill the plant. So this time of year being spring, there we can't see because the old vegetation is so thick, there's no green coming up yet. And again, speaking to other municipalities about Phragmites, they're saying the most effective time to spray is in the fall. So that was not going to be an option for the project unless it was going to be deferred into next year. So at that time, what Mike and I discussed was that, okay, perhaps we don't have to completely kill the Phragmites, get all the roots out, because in the neighboring farmer's field, there's actually Phragmites in that area as well. So it is likely that even if we cleared the area of Phragmites in the ditch, they will return because they're in close proximity. So it was at that time that Mike and I decided to scale back on the depth that we were going to dig out the Phragmites. So rather than treating it as a 1 meter excavation, we were going to treat it more like typical vegetation. So when we strip grass and topsoil, we typically go to 150 mils, and because that's typically the typical depth of topsoil that we see. So the recommendation was to go down to sub-excavating by 0.2 meters, and that would allow us to remove the top vegetation, so all the growth above ground, and it would get us down to the clay layer in the bottom of the ditch so that we could clean and reshape the ditch and install the subdrain. And then, so by reducing that quantity, we no longer needed the depth, the clay to fill the giant hole that would have been the void. So what I did in the tender at that time, Mike and I spoke at length about it, I reduced the quantity of the Phragmite removals to the 200 millimeter depth. I removed the extra clay that was required to go that 1 meter depth. And what I did with the 2 lowest bidders, we did not retender. I reached out to the 2 lowest bidders and said, because the project is over budget, we have decided to eliminate some of the provisional items we've carried and modify the scope of work related to the Phragmites and the excess soil. And are you agreeable to the prices that you have provided, for the prices you provided, are you agreeable to this reduced quantity in the tender? And both of the 2 lowest bidders that remained were agreeable to that, which is why then started our evaluation of the 2 lowest bidders and evaluating the tender based on the revised quantities. And at that time, we check for completeness of submissions. We check for balance of individual items. In this particular tender, schedule was a big thing for us as well. We evaluated based on schedule, because as you know, we have the Community Backyard Project happening as well on Tank Street. So it's a busy area. So it was important for us to have the project completed in a timely manner. So we considered schedule as well. And as we do on all of our tenders, project references do come into play, and it is written in our tender that is a consideration in our evaluation as well. So based on the balance of all those things, we went through, and my recommendation was to award to Henry Hyatt, because on the balance of the adjusted quantities, as I described, they were now the lowest bidder, not by much, mind you. They had a lower schedule, and their references were excellent. And it was on that basis that I made the recommendation to Mike to award Henry High.
Just before you leave, I'll just ask, Mike, do you have anything you'd like to add? And I'll open it up for questions.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for Mrs. Conley at this time regarding, I know it was a little bit confusing for us to see, and I appreciate you coming tonight to clarify that. Deputy Mayor Field.
Just one question. Thank you for the summary. When you approach both companies, is that, like, is there something written that they agree to resubmit to?
Yes, so I have it in an email from both companies where I reached out with the same email, same wording, and I said that, are you interested in still providing this work with these reduced quantities? It is over budget and the town can't move forward with the way, like with the, obviously the $2 million price tag. So I approached them both and asked if they were still happy with the prices provided for the reduced scope of work. So one thing I do want to add, typically when it comes to evaluating whether a tender should be retendered or if it can be negotiated with the lowest bidder, my understanding of it is that if the project, the scope of work remains the same, so in essence, we are still, even with those reduced quantities for the phragmites and the excess and the provisional items for excess soil removed, we are still reconstructing the same length of road. We are still reconstructing the same, or regrading and putting subdrain in the same length of ditch. So I didn't reduce the length of the work. I just reduced digging a hole, removing the phragmites. So at the time, again, discussed with Mike at length, was that we were not changing the intent of the tender. Therefore, we didn't find it appropriate to retender the project because we would be asking all the bidders to rebid the exact same work with a bit of dirt and phragmites removed. Right. So that is why we moved ahead with negotiating with the two lowest, and the two lowest were agreeable to that process. And this is the outcome of our analysis.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any questions from Councillor O'Hara?
I'm just a little bit confused here, sorry. Through you, your worship. Now, the prices that we received, was this the negotiated prices or was this the original?
So in Mike's report, I can't speak to what was in Mike's report. I have not seen it. But in my attachment, I imagine to Mike's report, on my first page under pricing and schedule, I provided the actual tendered prices, which were in the order of 3.3 to 1.7 to $3.3 million. And I summarized the kind of schedule there. And then on the last page, I provide the adjusted totals based on the adjusted quantities in the tender on the final page. And I provide that for Henry Hayek and Shoughton.
That's in Mr. Thompson's report, I believe. So it's correct. Yeah. Councillor Welsh.
Through you, I'm not sure that answers Mr. Brandon's question, if we're permitted to answer Mr. Brandon's question.
And the question?
What was the question?
To go back in the minutes, Mr. Brandon asked that this be tabled.
Yeah, he asked that we table this item.
I thought he wanted a question answered.
No, so I'll get you to sit back down, please. And Ms. Conley, yeah, when he addressed council, we were asked to table this item, and it's up to council.
Councillor Patel had her hand up.
All right.
Your worship.
Councillor Patel, did you have a question?
Yes, through your worship. What my question was is kind of a combination of the information we're dealing with, which is with the modifications of the two lowest bidders with this reduction in the scope of those particular items, bringing this in on budget, which was the goal, and to educate the fact that you couldn't do that seasonally. Would it have made a difference with the other bidders that were not contacted or had that opportunity to rebid with that reduction?
I do want to clarify, there was nothing that was rebid. So, sure. And as Wayne Brandon brought that up as well, nothing was rebid. The question that was asked was that, are you willing to do the work with the reduced quantities under these items, and I provided them with a spreadsheet with the quantities that were changed or struck out in red. So they could see exactly how the tender changed, and I asked them, are you still willing to do the work for the prices that you provided? And both of them said yes. So I didn't reach out to the next kind of bidders. I did actually run the math, so to speak, on the additional bidders as well to see if they were going to come in lower than the lowest two that I had, and they did not. So that's why I proceeded with only contacting the two lowest bidders, because they were in fact the two lowest based on the adjusted quantities.
Thank you.
You okay
And
with that?
I am with that. So I'm sorry that I used the wrong terminology, but the fact that you did the mathematical calculations that would have maybe changed that is the answer I was looking for. Was that done? So thank you.
Yeah, my concern is we're not having another council meeting till May 13th, which I certainly don't want to hold this project up. Councillor Wells.
When are the other unsuccessful bidders notified why they haven't met the requirements?
They haven't not met the requirements. So I mean, they tendered, right? So they were not the lowest. So typically if you're not the lowest or second lowest, there's no reason to kind of be waiting around to see what's going to happen. So I did not contact them to discuss that we were discussing with the two lowest bidders, because I felt that that wasn't necessary, as they weren't part of this discussion and they weren't the lowest.
Okay, I'm just going to ask the clerk, operations clerk, Mrs. Pearson, to make a statement,
Just
please.
for a technical add on that, with bids and tenders, all those do automatically receive the results, and so they are made aware of where they ended in position of their submission.
Good.
And if I may just add one more add, in terms of tabling with the intent of considering, retendering or rejig. I'm not sure what the consideration is there. We are really limited to the options, if we retender the same work and the outcome is not the same outcome. So another low bidder is the new low bidder. The town will open up themselves to discussions on the fact that it's the same scope of work, and now I'm not the lowest bidder anymore, and you tendered the exact same work, and you open yourself up to litigation that way. So if that is council's intent to retender, I do caution that that is a probable or a potential outcome of retendering the exact same project work. And like I said, changing the quantity of Phragmites removed and the amount of clay placed is not enough to consider it a different tender.
I also want to remind council there's extra cost if we get into retendering as well. I'm going to ask. Okay, sorry. I'll take the deputy mayor first, and I'll go to Mr. Charlebois. Go ahead, Joel.
In your experience, has the process that you just had to go through, have you had to do that before, or is this something I'm hearing that this is not normally done? Has this ever happened, or have you had to do this before? And I do have a follow-up question.
So if I could, in our evaluation, we consider all the key factors. Like I said, we don't just consider price. Now, traditionally speaking, some municipalities only consider price, and they award to the lowest bidder, no matter what the outcome or cost or repercussions of that may be. So I wouldn't say that that is a typical process. And in this day and age, I'm sure we've all heard of projects that have had time overruns, budget overruns, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important to consider completeness of bid, schedule, and actual references of contractors, because going over on time, going over on budget, it has significant impacts to the town. Having a road closed longer than it needs to be closed, or even having MIG contracted minute inspection on site every single day for additional hours over what was budgeted. There are real costs associated with that. So in my experience, I call references. I always call references. That might not always be the typical process for others, but it is a process I go through. I check for completeness. I check for balance. I evaluate the schedule provided, and I call references, and I collect all that information, and then I do an evaluation with all the facts in front of me. I don't jump to conclusions. I look at the facts, and I make a recommendation based on what I feel is in the best interest of the town and the taxpayers' dollars.
Okay, just before you go, Deputy Mayor Field, go ahead.
And you just covered a few of those items around references. What what considerations are taken in the references? And I understand not just that this is a nice company, this is a nice company. Can you explain what is discussed with references?
Yep. So when I call references, I ask, I ask to speak to either like if it's a municipality that I call or the consultant that I call, I call everybody to see who's going to answer because you don't always get callbacks. Unfortunately, everybody's busy. So the typical questions that I ask, you start off, did the project finish on time? Did it finish on budget? Were the contractor's practices safe? Did they work effectively as a team? Were they efficient? Were there any safety concerns on site? Were there any instances in terms of contract administration? What unfortunately we see with some contractors is they do work in advance without having approved change notices. And at the end of the contract, I get slammed with a stack of change notices that weren't approved for hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not contract items that are over budget. So if I get feedback from a municipality or a consultant that this was an experience with a contractor, that obviously is considered in the evaluation. Now, with saying that, I am not suggesting anything about any of the parties that I evaluated as part of this tender. I'm just saying in my experience, that is what I ask about when I call references. Okay. And obviously would you recommend, this contractor to another municipality being the ultimate question.
All right, one more time. Anything else from council? If not, Mrs. Conley, thank you for coming to address council.
Thank you for your time.
I will ask Mr. Charlebois. I know council probably is aware of it if they read the report. I know there's an overrun, but I'm just going to ask Mr. Charlebois, our treasurer, to speak to that, please.
Yes, through you, your worship. Yeah, there's an extra $90,000. You saw the original tenders that came in. I commend our town engineer on bringing it down just to the $90,000. The last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a huge increase in the cost of construction. I'm sure in your private lives, you probably have noticed that as well, if you ever done any repairs recently. So I highly recommend this is a good value for money for the town.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion regarding that motion? I know the clerk read it. I can have her read it again if you wish, or are you okay to vote on it now? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving this motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, thank you. This will move us on to the next item. We have a report from Julie Bullock, Director of Parks and Recreation, regarding the fee schedule addition. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Hyatt, seconded by Councillor Clark. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities dated the 8th of April 2024 regarding addition of recreation program registration fees to the 2024 fee schedule.
Any questions from council? Mrs. Bullock, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That will bring us now to the second opportunity for the public to address council. Is there anyone wishing to address council at this time? Yep, you can come again.
Thank you, folks. I just want one more comment before, and I guess it's a done deal if you pass the motion. A couple of points I wanted to bring up. The reference to your references, that's all well and good. This was not a weighted form of tender or tender call. And for those of you that don't understand the weighted process, you get certain points for your references, you get points for your safety policies, you get point for your management team, you get points for your form of tender. That's not what this is. This is just an open, it's a form of tender. Tender was called. Our company was low bidder. We thought we were low bidder. It should have been done, and it should have been negotiated with us only to lower the price to get you a better price where you had to be. And it was not. It went back out after the numbers were made public. It went back out, and they were put out to bid again. The tender did change.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to address council.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll go on to unfinished, new and unfinished business. We have a notice of motion from Councillor Chad Hyatt regarding the wording on the procedural bylaw. I guess council has the option with 2/3, you can deal with that motion tonight. Or if you want to wait till the next meeting. Councillor Hyatt, how would you like to deal with that?
I'm okay to deal with it tonight if everyone else wants to.
Okay, is everyone okay? It'll come to the next meeting and we'll deal with it then?
No, he said he'd deal
Oh,
with it.
you want to deal with it tonight? Sorry.
Sure.
All right, so have you got a motion prepared there? Mandy, would you read a motion when you get a chance there, please?
I just need the motion to bring it forward tonight with the 2/3 majority, worship, and then we can move on to that motion. So
Yeah.
Councillor Hyatt, I believe, moved it for tonight.
I need a seconder, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Perfect. And I just need to know if that's a 2/3.
All right, so I'll call the vote. Now this is for, we'll need 2/3 and this is so we can deal with it tonight. All those in favor of dealing with this tonight? Opposed? That's carried. So we will be dealing with this tonight. Councillor Hyatt, are you going to make that motion?
Please.
I'll need a seconder. Councillor Clark? You want to read that motion,
You gotta get
please?
the motion.
I'll give you a few minutes to
Thank
get
you.
it ready.
Okay. And that is whereas the town of Petrolia Council operates through a procedural bylaw known as bylaw number 46 of 2022 for the format and process of regular meetings under section 3.2. And whereas there's no specific definition for the release of council agendas included in this section, and I believe that we need to outline some details regarding timelines for adding new items to an already released agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the town of Petrolia direct the clerk operations clerk to make amendment to section 3.2F of bylaw 46 2022 to include the wording, there shall be no additions to the council agenda unless made and circulated within 48 hours of the regularly scheduled council meeting. Any new items required to be added within the 48-hour period shall be presented on the next council agenda or handled as a special meeting of council per section 3.3.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Field.
Through you, just looking for clarification where there shall be no additions to the council agenda, and then down further it says any new items required to be added. So is this wording, like with the example of our past council meeting, we had some wording changes. It was not a new item, it was just some wording. I'm just concerned that, you know, I definitely want time to evaluate something new, but if it's just a clarity of some words or something that we've already quite familiar with, and it doesn't change the outcome, I guess I'm just looking for.
Councillor Hyatt or Mrs. Pearson, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, for me, it's not specifically words, it's new council agenda item. So specifically, this last case was the bylaw, which was added 6 hours before the meeting, which does not provide enough time for council to review, does not provide enough time for the public to review. So it is specifically related to adding a specific brand new item to the agenda, not words.
Certainly, Your Worship, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it was unfortunate the last time when that bylaw came at the last minute. I think it was just a technical error, really is what it was. But, all right, Councillor Welsh.
I don't know if this would be a friendly amendment or not, but through you, I'm wondering if we could perhaps even include that only items that are of a time-sensitive manner are added, so it isn't just.
That could be a friendly amendment, Your Worship. That
Okay,
still
we
meets
can
the
do that.
intent.
Okay,
And I'm sorry, I have Councillor Hyatt as the mover. I'm not sure I caught the seconder, so I
I
apologize.
think it was Councillor Clark.
Perfect, thank you. So that will include time-sensitive matter or time-sensitive item to the motion. Yes.
I think we understand the
Not
intent.
to add an item unless it's time-sensitive.
Councillor O'Hara.
To you, your worship, who decides if it's a time-sensitive issue?
Is that me?
Yeah.
Clerk, okay. That would be the clerk, operations clerk. Yeah. Okay, All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? And that motion carries. All right, that'll move us on to the bylaws. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to have the bylaw read a first and second time. Moved by Councillor Hyatt, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? That's carried, and I'll ask for a motion to have the bylaw read a third time, finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Patel, seconded by Councillor Clark. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that would be for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to pass bylaw number 19, 2024, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to confirm the resolutions and motions of the Council of the Town of Petrolia, which were adopted up to and including April 8th, 2024, be read a third time and finally passed.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries, and a motion to adjourn would be in order. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Patel. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that would be for the April 8th, 2024 meeting of the Council of the Town of Petrolia to be adjourned to the next regular scheduled meeting of council to be held on Monday, May 13th, 2024, or to the call of the chair.
Any discussions from council only to the time? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And to the public, thank you for coming tonight.